Thanks for tuning in to My Valley, His Victory, hosted by me, Mackenzie Smith, where I interview Christians who love the outdoors and have walked through valleys in their lives. In a world of highlight reels and surface-level relationships, we all have faced hardships. I believe our experiences can be encouraging to others if we have the courage to be vulnerable. 2 Corinthians 1 says, "The Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." My goal is to inspire you to come to the Creator through His creation and connect you with Christians who have been through similar experiences. I pray that this podcast encourages you if you are in a valley and pushes you to share how God has turned your past valley into His victory. If you enjoy these episodes, please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform and follow this podcast on Instagram. If these episodes have been impactful for you, or you know someone that would benefit from one of these episodes, please feel free to share it with a friend. Your support means the world to me. Thanks so much for being here. On today's episode of My Valley, His Victory, we have Braden. Benny is a record-setting hiker, photographer, and founder of Responsible Stewardship, a nonprofit based out of Tennessee. I met Benny at Highlander in 2023 and have been continually blessed by our friendship since meeting him. Thanks so much for being with us today, Benny.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's truly a pleasure.
Absolutely. So, Benny, why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Well, I was born and raised in East Tennessee, in the Tennessee Valley, but right on the edge of the Cumberland Plateau. And it was is a cool place to grow up because you got all these mountains, cliff faces, all that. That's where my grandparents lived. We actually lived down in the valley. And but yeah, been here all my life. I live roughly 7 miles from the house I grew up in, and the house I grew up in is roughly 4 miles from the hospital I was born in. So as far as that part, I didn't travel very far, but later in life, I just love traveling. I love seeing the world and seeing what all God has created. But yeah, I used to be a firefighter, rescue diver, and EMT for well over a decade, and struggled with post-traumatic stress from the result of some of that service. And so that put me into the outdoors, or back into the outdoors. And so I hiked a lot. To this point, roughly around 9,000 miles, give or take. Haven't hiked very much in the last couple of years just due to a foot injury that's kind of caught up to me. You know, you can't do that many things and not. But that's okay. It was a beautiful chapter. And so now I've kind of transitioned into doing more photography type stuff, but kind of created Responsible Stewardship from the need of what I was seeing in the outdoor community in, the result of 2020 and all the additional people outside that didn't know how to be outside. We started seeing a lot of trash in lands that I depended on for my coping. And I knew there'd be others that would need it as well. So that's why we started our all-volunteer nonprofit. And we are beyond blessed with that, with the people who've chosen to be a part of it. You, as a team leader, we are grateful for everyone that has picked this flag up and wanted to make a difference in their own communities. And that was our vision for it, is to get people to doing this all across the United States and even the world. We've had people picking up in Taiwan, in Patagonia, Scotland, and all across the U.S. So it is really awe-inspiring just to see all that.
Yeah. So piggybacking on that, at what point did Responsible Stewardship change from the lands I recreate in are terribly trashed and I want to clean them up, to let me get other people involved? Because I think a lot of times we get stuck in like what we can do and we don't think outside of that. So kind of talk to us about where the switch was for you in let's try to get as many people involved in this as possible.
For me, it started in Max Patch, a piece along the Appalachian Trail. It's a 360-degree view, grassy bald. A lot of people love it. But in 2020, a lot of college kids loved it too. And about 11 different colleges, they would go there and do their frat parties because they couldn't do them on campus. And so from essentially August all the way into late November or early November, I went up once a week and I picked up a truckload of trash once a week. The sad thing is, I wasn't the only one. There were other groups, other people going up during the week and doing the exact same thing. And the amount of trash that was being removed from that is probably just mind blowing. I didn't even weigh any of that stuff then. But a lot of people made a lot of noise. I made a lot of noise on social media. I had a bad habit of that then. But it brought a lot of awareness. I wanted to, one, show people what I was finding, and two, show people what I was doing about it. Because I felt like if I could show that, then other people would feel like, oh, it's okay to pick up trash. I don't have to wear an orange jumpsuit in order to be able to do that. And because that's where our society is today. It's what we associate it with being in jail. But so other people started coming out and picking up. And then I got connected with a buddy of mine, Jerry Willis, in Knoxville. He wanted to start an organization called Save Our Smokies for the Great Smoky Mountain National Park because he was seeing almost the same thing in the park. And so we joined forces very early. Matter of fact, him and I did our very first cleanup together as Save Our Smokies in that November. And I remember just being mind blown what I was seeing inside of a national park. The very first cleanup, I stepped in a pile of poop, human poop, not bear. And right there in the parking lot. And I started seeing this everywhere. Every time we would do a cleanup or every time we would go different spaces in the park, all the parking lots and pull-offs had all this trash, things thrown over it, people using the bathroom right in the parking lot. And so started just researching that and then found out that the park closes many of the bathrooms during the fall to spring months. And which doesn't make sense. If you're the most visited national park and you're dealing with 14 million people, they're going to go. You just need to give them a place to go or they're going to go where you don't want them to. And so we just started seeing just atrocious things going on in the park. And so we figured out how to encourage people to come join us, started organizing cleanups. With Save Our Smokies, I designed our logo. And actually inside the logo, you'll see Responsible Stewardship as like a tagline. I knew I wanted to do something with it at some point. I just didn't know what then. But everything that RS does now, we perfected it almost in Save Our Smokies. That's where we kind of start playing with, one, doing these large group cleanups. Like we did the largest cleanup ever held in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park on Earth Day 3 or 4 years ago. And we had like over 200 volunteers spread out all over parts of the park. The park is encompassing 2 different states. And it went great. We had great results. Overall, the first year Save Our Smokies was going, we removed 10,000 pounds just out of parking lots, pull-offs, and overlooks, which is insane because, the park is also supposedly cleaned up later too, but just understanding how to deal with government. It was a big learning curve. We learned not every government agency works well with everybody. So, we learned that incorporation is important because then, our governments don't think you're just an individual just out to make personal gain or whatever. So incorporating, I learned, was a very valuable tool. So when Save Our Smokies incorporated, the Park Service was a little more willing to work with us. And now Save Our Smokies has a great relationship with the Park Service. But I learned some of those things for myself, for RS. And so that's why we went through a year later after Save Our Smokies got established. I started dabbling with my idea of, as a movement, responsible stewardship. And in 2022, we incorporated to be a 501c3 nonprofit, and it was amazing. Donations, grants, organizations willing to work with you, just like National Park Service, Tennessee State Park Service, Tennessee Department of Agriculture, Army Corps of Engineers, and National Park or National Forest Service, because they know we're all volunteer. We don't charge a single penny for anybody to come out and join anything that we do. We even have a free camp out weekend twice a year in Middle Tennessee at Fall Creek Falls State Park, and it's something we partner with the park. They provide us the camping area for all of our volunteers, and we go into Fall Creek and we do several cleanups a year for them. Clean up the outskirts, rural parts of the park that typically you see a little illegal dump sites on, but we also hit the waterfalls, the popular spots that everybody goes to enjoy during the summertime. But for us, we just want to take care of what's taking care of us, mentally, and just like everybody else. So the best we can encourage people to do it. And a lot of people, they see that there's something very gratifying about cleaning up a mess.
For sure.
For me, I associate whenever I'm cleaning up a mess, I'm seeing an instant result. I just cleaned up something horrible and removed it from the environment. That's sort of what I'm doing in my head, too. I'm cleaning up a mess in my head, too. So to me, there's a correlation of that.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I think that's really important as we do this. It's anyone can go and pick up trash, but it's also at the end of the day, why are you doing this? And you have to be connected to either the outdoors or have something, kind of happening internally for you to really, I think you have to have a drive and a purpose to continue on something, or else you'll just, you'll do it once and you won't do it again.
Yeah.
And so I love that for you, it wasn't only just, I'm doing this because I love the outdoors, but it's also helping me in some way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We also work with municipalities, counties, cities, different people like that, across the state and across the country to clean up communities. It's not just about public lands. It's also about communities or waterways, like we partner with the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is the main electric producer in the Tennessee Valley. We partner with them to help keep the waterways here clean, removing trash. I mean, last year we removed 40-something thousand pounds just off Watts Bar Lake alone, which is part of the Tennessee River system. And that's a lot of trash. And you figure we were removing it with pontoons at the time. So we can only load it down to like 2,000 pounds, maybe 3,000 if we pushed it. That's a little bit of the pontoon barely sticking out of the water, probably more than what we should haul. But we're still working on trying to get a boat. We hope to finalize that deal maybe next year. But yeah, it's a lot of people want their communities to be better. They want them to be clean. Mm-hmm. They want them to be safe. They want to know that their kids and their pets can go outside without bringing back something they've picked up, whether it be a hypodermic needle or whether it be some trash or whatever. And some people in rural areas still are on well systems. And so when someone dumps a truckload of just trash, that's a very concentrated area of stuff that's leaching into the soil and into the water. And that's why we place a higher importance on illegal dump sites versus your basic roadside litter. We still deal with that, the best we can, but our priority is these illegal dump sites because they make the biggest negative impact. And at the end of the day, what responsible stewardship is about making a positive impact. And we like to tell people you have three options when you go outside. You can make a negative impact, meaning you can just throw your stuff down and walk away from it, leave it worse than you found it. You can have a second type of impact, which is a neutral impact, which is like exercising, leave no trace. You pack out what you pack in, or you can make your third type of impact, and that's a positive impact, which is leave it better than you found it. I mean, if you see someone else's trash, you pack that out. It's okay to pack someone else's stuff out, or it's okay to pack things out that doesn't belong there. I've carried a lot of heavy stuff out before, and that's okay. It made me feel better. The area was better, and it was much more inviting for the next person that came behind me, which that might have been their very first time in the outdoors. If it's trashed up, they're not going to feel welcome. They're not going to feel safe. They're not going to want to hike in trash,
right,
or go camp in it. So if I can leave it better, maybe that person in their first time, they may be a first responder or a military veteran or someone struggling with trauma. And I don't want them to miss out on the opportunity to learn how to cope and heal from an area that's trashed up.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that it's really cool that the outdoors is part of your journey in that process and handling that situation. So kind of transition into talking to us about how you got into hiking. I know you said you grew up in the outdoors, but you said you kind of came back to it and you hiked 9,000 miles and you kind of went in, I would say, like head first. And you weren't just your basic outdoorsman. So talk to us a little bit about that and some of the trails that you've done and just that process.
I've never been someone that is halfway in. I've always, either I'm all in or I'm all out. I don't have time to dabble in something. I'm very goal oriented. I love just pushing myself and seeing what I like to do. I love being the best at everything that I do. I want to be the best that I can be. When that chapter is done, I can walk away. I know I did to my best of my ability. Now let's go attack something else. Because life is full of chapters. And life here on earth is short. And I want, whatever my chapters are, I want it to be one adventure after another. It may not be the same type of adventure. It may not be hiking. It may not be photography. It may be something else. But I want it to be like I gave it my all. I have no regrets walking away from it. But going back to the hiking, I grew up, my grandparents, like I said, they lived up on the mountain. So me and my cousins, we had all these cliff faces we would make. We called them lookouts. We had a very short vocabulary. So it was lookout 1, lookout 2, lookout 3. Very ingenious, right? So we had all these lookouts that looked over the East Tennessee Valley. And on a low humidity day, you could actually see the Appalachian Mountains, which was really cool. You could see the Smokies and all that. And at that time, as a kid, you just don't know anything. And looking back out now, it's like I was looking at mountains that would make a giant impact on my life, the Smokies. But, growing up, hiking, making little trails around my grandparents' place there on the mountain, leaving from there, fast forwarding, even into, being a senior in high school, I went to the Big South Fork and done a hiking trip, a backpacking trip, basically, when all my other friends went to Panama City. So I was in the mountains. And later on, whenever I started doing rescue work, I stepped away from it because I didn't want to miss calls. I didn't want to not be available for an emergency. So I stepped away from the outdoors during that time period. But then gradually got back into this when I started struggling with PTS in 2013. In that area, I started struggling. So 2015, I got back into hiking. Started doing parts of the Cumberland Trail here. It's a trail that's going to be 313, 14, 15 miles long, somewhere in that neighborhood when it's done. I've done good sections of it, 50-mile sections and things like that. They started building the Cumberland Trail before they started making the AT. It's not done yet. So that kind of gives you an idea. The group that's over making the trail now, the Cumberland Trail Conference, amazing nonprofit. They're making big headway now because back then they would just get leases and agreements to build the trail on people's lands. Well, when those people died and the kids come in, the kids are like, no, get that trail off my land. Now they go through and they purchase those lands or have the land granted to them, whichever other organizations purchase it and gives it to the CTC. So it's being done properly now, and they're making good headway. They're building a lot of trail. And actually, RS got to help build some sections of trail, and we partnered with the CTC several times on doing some things. But I started hiking it just weekends, and I started doing the AT from the south going up. And I've done from Springer Mountain to basically Grayson Highlands, some sections 3 times. Because you go, and you have another friends that see that you went, they want to go, so you take them. So then you have another set of friends that see you go, they want to go. So you make several trips, and that's okay. But done that, done the Smokies 900 miler, which is a trail system in the park. It's 800 miles of trail. They call it the 900 miler because there used to be 900 miles till the park decommissioned 100 miles or more.
And that's the trail that you held the FKT on, right?
That's the one I did the FKT in 2017. I did called Smokies 900 miler. I did it 2 times in 1 year. I did an FKT. The only 900 miles I did 2, and they both were FKT. I've never done a 900 miler that was normal paced. The first one was winter. I did it in the wintertime, 2017. I came back the following fall and did it again. My first one was 78 days, 944 miles. Now, grant you, quite a few miles were closed due to the fires from 2016. And that one, I hiked 4 days and I worked 3 days, which that's not what you do with an FKT. And I started out not with the intent of doing a fast on time hike. I didn't even know what FKT stood for. I was almost done. I was like 3 weeks from being done when someone said, hey, are you trying to break the FKT? I'm like, what's that? So I had to do all this research and figure out who had it. And it was a nightmare trying to get a hold of her because she's a little bit older in age and just didn't do social media that much. And so I actually ran into her on trail and had no idea. But anyways, long story short, it got a lot of publicity. It was very embarrassing. I couldn't go to a grocery without that someone wanting to stop me and talk to me. It was insane. So I came back the following fall to redo it and make it look like an FKT. I didn't come out, So that one I did it in 43 days, and I did it 924 miles. I used a mapping program where you take the park's map, my routes, and this program, and it tells you where you're hiking too much. Basically the same program that UPS municipalities will use to map out their garbage routes, things like that for efficiency. So I use technology to trim up my miles. And since then, there's been 3 people to come in and do the FKT. My time stood for 3 years. And a friend of mine did it. And then 2 more friends of mine did it at like days after he finished. But in the end, their days were less than my days. Their days were, let's say, I think it's like 27 or 28. Like they cut it down. But their mileage was more than my mileage. So I still hold the mileage record. And I'm the only one that's done it twice. But the cool thing about that whole thing is all 5 of us done it different. I backpacked it solely. 1 day hiked it solely. 1 trail ran it solely. And then the 2 that hold the record now, they did it as a tandem team. they did a mix. They did a mix of hiking and backpacking. And I think they only spent one day in the backcountry, where I spent a lot of days in the backcountry. But yeah, that's that's kind of the history behind that. But yeah, I've hiked, done the John Muir Trail twice. Love that trail. I could do it every year if my foot would let me. I've done the High Sierra Trail once. All three summits on Whitney were sunrise hikes from Guitar Lake. Just a magical place. And let's see, I've done some hiking in Alaska, helped with a documentary that unfortunately didn't come to pass, but also did Highline. You went to Highline Trail in northeast Utah. That was part of a documentary that you can find now on Amazon, which was really cool. I got to share my personal story in that, and really, really a cool opportunity, a cool stage to share your story on. Very intimidating. I feel like an idiot in it. It's like the first, I've done YouTube like forever, which I shut all my YouTube down, but I've done YouTube videos forever, and just inside that movie, I just felt like a
little stage fright.
Yeah, just a lot of times I would say something stupid, and plus it's also editing too. You always want like last say in my editing, in any editing of me, and you don't get that luxury. Guys that are editing, they edit it the way they think it is, and maybe I am that goofy. But
I think you are.
Yeah, it just was like some things I just cringe over the way it was edited. But the guys that edited, they did a great job. Don't get me wrong. Phenomenal movies. Some of the ones that worked on Mile and a Half, which is a pretty popular outdoor hiking movie, also did this one. And so I think Jason Fitzgerald is one of them. Phenomenal guy, and just super talented. And Chris Mead, Almerson Films, overseeing the project, was the producer. So that film that we shot, everybody's carrying extra batteries, extra camera equipment, lenses, cameras. Then you have a guy that drops out because of his feet gets destroyed. Then we're carrying all his gear on top of that, and they hand me a camera. It's the first time I ever used like a real camera. Until then, I was just using the phone. And so a lot of the still shots in the movie I took.
Very cool.
Which is really cool. A lot of your sunset, lake silhouette stuff, those were mine. And pretty phenomenal. But yeah, anyways, fast forward. I've done 90 miles along the Black Sea of Turkey. One of probably the most awe-inspiring moments in out hiking, because there wasn't a single village that we went through in Turkey that didn't treat us with so much generosity. Like,
that's sweet.
People bringing us copious amounts of food. Like, I thought I was going to weigh more when I got back. We would be walking a random road, and there would be like these groups of guys standing around a fire, and they had one of those Turkish tea boiler kettle things. They'd be drinking tea, and they would like, come make you tea or what, and then they'd fix us some tea right there. You're thinking, okay, this is where things go wrong. And not at all. I mean, just I can't express that experience enough. The generosity that we. Now, I didn't like Istanbul. Istanbul at night, beautiful. A lot of beautiful architecture areas we went into. The mosques were lit up, but size-wise, I didn't like Istanbul. The small villages, so people were always the first to say hello, and just couldn't say enough about that experience. But yeah, I would say, let's say I've done a bit in Mackay, Bartram, Arlo, which are all fairly small. Ocean to Lake Trail in Florida. Yeah, a lot of places.
Yeah. So cool. So much travel and seeing so many beautiful places in a unique way.
Yeah.
You know, you can drive to some of these places, but it's just cool to get a different perspective of being up in the mountains.
And sometimes, you know, like whenever we went to Turkey, we made a stop in Copenhagen, and we stayed over 24 hours in Copenhagen. So we did 20 miles on foot around Copenhagen.
Yeah.
And then on our way back, we stopped in Paris for a couple of days, and we did 20 miles around Paris. It's different when you're on foot. It's different whenever you can have that time, not have to deal with, you know, having to worry about driving in traffic or finding a parking space. Eat local cuisine. Like in Copenhagen, we slept on someone's couch up there. I didn't even know. And then in Paris, we stayed. Who we hiked with in Turkey was a couple. They hadn't come back yet, but they let us stay at their house, so I could stay in the spare bedroom there in Paris. But yeah, just cool moments, taking advantage of different opportunities, and just seeing the opportunity for generosity in the world.
For sure. So talk to us a little bit about how the outdoors, and maybe specifically hiking and backpacking for you, plays a role in your relationship with Christ.
Well, number one, you're surrounded by His creation. You know, in the mid, like 2003 on up to 2011, I loved to turkey hunt. I still love to turkey hunt. I just don't have time to do it anymore. I might get to go next spring. There's something about sitting at the edge of a field as the sun's coming up before daylight. Just as the sun's coming up, you're hearing all the birds start chirping. You're seeing the squirrels moving around. You're seeing the deer come out in the field. You're hearing the turkeys gobbling. It's hard to deny. For me, it's hard to deny an existence of God. When you're on a trail in the Sierra, it's early in the morning. You're just getting started, so you got all that golden hour. And you see life waking up. You see deers on the trail. You see birds flying everywhere. You look down at the water and you see the trout hitting the surface of the water. And you're surrounded by granite and these sheer streams of gold sunlight hitting the edges and just silhouetting or highlighting. It's hard. It's hard to say there's no God. You can't at that point, you know, and just the peace. And there's only one way you get that peace, you know, and that's through Him. And so when I'm out there, you know, I'm able to work through stuff in my head. I call it my desk, clean off my desk. And there's a lot of moments that, you know, I just take time and I'm in full prayer. Like I could pray off and on throughout the day when I'm out there, and I do. It might be on different things. It might be on the same thing. It might be what I'm trying to clean off my desk. But when I'm done, I feel closer to Him out there than I do in a building, you know, surrounded by other worshipers. And I don't know what that means. I just know that I'm not distracted. He's got my full attention, and I can focus on Him. I can focus on what I'm trying to find out, what I'm asking, what I'm praying about, and just the peace. There's only one way to get that peace, and that's spending time with Him. And to spend time with Him, you got to spend time in His creation. And I can't say that enough. Even in moments where I'm in a turkey blind, when I'm hunting, Even when I was doing that stuff, it still feel like he's right there next to you. You know, and whenever I'm praying, I'm not when I'm hiking and praying, I'm not saying this long, formal, big prayer. It's like he's right next to me. We're just talking. We're just having a conversation, and I feel like there's no question. I feel like he is right with me in those moments, like every single time. There's never been a moment in the outdoors I didn't think he wasn't with me. Even whenever I was in uh, on side of Lighty Peak on the Highline Trail when we were in that bad storm and lightning striking just yards from us, I felt like he was with me. I didn't run screaming, off the mountain, running for my life.
Right.
Which I stayed with Joe and Matt. Joe was like, well, I guess we just keep going. And I joke about it. I say, well, Joe's worth a lot more money than I am. So if he doesn't show up, someone's going to come look for him. I need to be where he's at because they'll find us. But in the end, obviously I turned the camera around to face me. But at that same time, lightning was striking like really, 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 really close. And I was 90% sure that was probably going to be the last, last hike. We'd probably get hurt, but God watched over us. But I wasn't in fear for my life. Because at the same time, I knew, well, if it is last, then I know where I'll wake up. There's comfort in knowing that. It's like, I know this isn't the end. It's just a pregame.
So good. So good. So you talk about experiencing God in some of these really extreme places and, being out in the backcountry and going on these adventures. But can you give a listener who maybe doesn't have the opportunity to go to some of these really unique places just to find God in creation, maybe just right around where they live?
Here lately, I've been feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude, being grateful for the life that God's given me. It's not gone the way I expected it to go, by no means. I'm not where I thought I would be. If you would have asked me at 19 years old, where would I be when I'm 50 or 51? And I've dealt with a lot of tough times, as most people do. Things that didn't go my way, relationships, marriages that didn't go the way I thought they would go. But this is where God wants me. And I don't question it. Why? Why me? Why this relationship? Why did this have to end? Why did that have to end? Why did I have to experience this? But instead, I'm feeling grateful. Because what an amazing life I've got to live. So many incredible chapters, so many beautiful places I've got to witness with my own eyes. The simple things of just looking at the wildlife around my house, or looking at spending time with my kids, or just my friends, and just seeing what God is doing in their lives, or just for me, it's been to the point where I've almost started crying going down the road. Just feel so grateful, so overwhelming, like you wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
And that's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I don't worry. Well, I mean, Scripture tells us not to worry. Right? Not something that
Easier said than done sometimes.
exactly. Oh, 100%, 100%. Trust me, I know that one well. But Matthew says, "Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself." And then in Exodus it talks about, "I will fight for you. You just need to be silent." I feel like when he says just need to be silent, it also means don't worry about it. Make this silent. Stop worrying about it. He's got it. And as humans, it's so tough to let go because you're like, oh, I can do this. I've got this. We don't have it. We've never had it. One of the things my dad told me before he passed away, he'd been struggling with black lung. He was a coal miner. And he's on his deathbed and he's telling a story about how he used to pray to God, who's going to take care of my family when I'm gone? And this is his prayer over and over. He kept worrying about it, just so worried about it. And he said finally one day God told him that, who do you think's been taking care of him all this time? After that, he didn't worry anymore. And so I feel that, he's been taking care of me this whole time. I've not been me, but yeah, there's a long ways to get around to saying that God, when you eliminate the worry, He opens your eyes. You're no longer blind.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's really, really good and really important. And I think just having that posture of gratitude for today and for everything is really, really important.
Yeah.
You can't stress that enough. Okay, well, switching into the title of this podcast, My Valley, His Victory, I would love for you to share a season of wilderness or a valley that you experienced in your life and just what God maybe taught you or prepared you for in that season.
Man, I've been through so many. Obviously, I'll give you a few examples. Struggling with post-traumatic stress. For me, mine manifested in anger, loud anger, angry outburst, which is completely different from who I am. I'm a very soft-spoken person, It's almost like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of deal. But I remember whenever I would get triggered into an episode, I would get so mad and so angry and so out of control. I felt like there was no control whatsoever. And I would try to avoid the situation completely until I was backed into a corner, and then it's just, unleash. And I'd immediately flee. I'd go sleep in my truck for a few days, block out all the windows, turn everything off, and just lay across my seats and sleep. Let my brain reset. And God would reset that, and afterwards I'd be just fine. And, just that time, just pray and just calm my brain, make it be quiet. And so dealing with that. But then last year, I started dealing with a personal family issue that was extremely unfortunate, but it brought on a lot of depression and anxiety, which was completely, my brain going wild. As a first responder, we're trained to take very little information, create a worst case scenario in our head so that when we pull up on scene, we're ready. You're not standing there like, what do I do? That's what my brain was doing for 10 months. And completely out of control like a runaway freight train. No control over it whatsoever. And to push me to my breaking point, to finally I was like 1,600 and something days PTS episode free, and then I had one. And it was a big one. To the point to where I was sitting on my couch writing a suicide letter. I was done. Not perfectly happy with that decision, but I was just ready to go home. I'm like, heaven's going to be so much better in this place. This world is so messed up. I can't do it no more. And it wasn't that seconds that I had that out of my mouth that a friend of mine called. And she had a lot of positive energy and kind of snapped me out of that for the moment. And then the following day, I ran into my mechanic and his wife. They were aware of what was going on with me, and they prayed over me immediately. My worry, my fear, my anxiety, all went away. Went away. Didn't worry about nothing, which I shouldn't have been worried about nothing anyways in that situation, but still just the way my brain has been wired over the years, or short circuited, whichever you want to call it. It was in control. And Satan was trying to steal, the breath from my lungs. John 10:10 comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And I was allowing that to happen. But afterwards, I've not thought about it. The situation really. I'm not worried about it at all. I know God has this. It's going to be put to bed. But I'll share with you too, like, since I can't hike anymore due to my foot injury, or I don't hike really due to my foot injury, I do work out a lot. I'm in my gym every day for at least an hour or more. And I have this huge dry erase board. And whenever I'm working out, I'll listen to like Love and Death, Red, Disciple, Skillet, some of the harder Demon Hunter, some of the harder Christian rock stuff. I'm a rock and roll guy at heart. And honestly, I don't listen to lyrics very much. I'm listening to music. I'm a music guy. But still listening to that stuff, maybe a song will say a certain line, and I'm praying the whole time I'm in my basement. The whole time I'm in my gym, I'm working out, I'm praying, I'm working through things, And so something will come on, remind me of a piece of scripture, and I'll go over on that dry erase board and I'll write a quick prayer. It could be just a couple words, or it could be like a sentence, or it could just be a verse. And that board got so full, you couldn't squeeze another word. I even tried writing it with a little fine one. It just wouldn't do it. And I didn't want to erase anything. So now, I've got these mirrors on my walls in my gym. Now I'm writing on the mirrors with the dry erase marker. And so it's one of those things, but I can go back now and look at that dry erase board. I can see almost every one of those prayers written down were answered. And it's cool going back and seeing that, And obviously with this, situation that I'm dealing with family, it's not 100% resolved yet. So there's a couple prayers in there that are still in limbo, still working. He's still working on those. But I have no doubt every single prayer on that board is going to be answered. Every single one of them. I know it. That's faith. And for me, that's powerful. To be working out, and I look over there, and that's a reminder of how powerful my God is. That's a reminder that He didn't forget about me. He's still with me. He's still listening. Because you get those times, it's like, are you listening? Are you listening to me? And He is.
Yeah, I called it, whenever we talked the first time, I called it your war room.
It is my war room. Yeah, and I never thought about that at all. And I think about that. Ever since you said that, every time I go in that gym, I'm like, let's go.
Yeah. I love, and I know I've said this, gosh, probably too many times on this podcast now, but I love that you wrote them down, put them in front of you in a place that you see every day, because I just think so often of scripture, and especially, the Old Testament, like every time God did something, like they put up something to remind them of what He did. Mm-hmm. Because I think so often if we don't do that, we can start to forget the things that He's done. Yeah. Or, just maybe not even notice some of the things that He's done. And it's like, oh no, I prayed about that 6 months ago. I have it written down right here. Mm-hmm. And like God showed up. And so I just think that it's so important and valuable to be writing down things and to be remembering, in constant reminder of all of the things that God has done for us. And there's no better way to do that than to write them down and to have that, plastered on a place that you get to see every day. And I think that's probably why, you are in this place of having so much gratitude is because you are not filling your brain with all the questions and doubts, because you're reminded of all of the things that God has done for you specifically. And so I think it's one of those things, like whatever we're putting into our brain is also going to be kind of what's coming out. Yeah. And so, just those visual reminders, I think, play a huge role in where your mindset is.
Oh, yeah. You know, my mom, she passed away in 2020. And so I've been slowly filtering through all of her stuff, which wasn't very much at all. I mean, honestly, it could have been a box I could put on this desk. But our relationship wasn't like the best. We struggled over the years. And her passing affected me more than my dad's passing. And I felt so heartbroken over that, you know. And so it's been really tough to go through these boxes, or this box of stuff, because it's things that she saved for me over the years, whether it be a report card or whether it be, you know, like pictures, but also her Bibles. And she always wrote in her Bibles. You know, if Dad was preaching, my dad was a pastor. If my dad was preaching, she would write in her Bible what the lesson was about. And then she had these, notebooks where, spiral notebooks where she'd write down prayers. So she has all these prayers in them. I can't even get it in me to open that one up, to read it. I haven't read the first one, because I know many of them are probably going to have me in it.
Yeah.
It's not time for me yet.
It's not time for you yet. That's really special, though, that you have those. Because I think a lot of people don't write down things like that. And so that's a really special thing to have a hold of.
Yeah, when my dad was getting bad, like in 2004, I stayed with them for Christmas. So I was there, my brother and his family were there, and they were all healthy. So for the first time in years, we all as a family were under the same roof. I remember just Dad expressing how much joy in his life that was. And that was his last Christmas. And I gave him a journal. I said, Dad, write in this journal anything you want me to know. Anything you want to tell me, just write in it. Even if you're having a great day, if not a great day, just write in it. Write an old story. Doesn't matter. Just write in it. And also gave him like a old cassette tape recorder, and gave him a bunch of cassettes. I said, if you want to record something, record it. And so I have that journal. It has most of them are prayers for me. And then also a cassette that has his voice, and which is really cool. And one of the things I did that Christmas is I recorded every Christmas morning before we opened up the first gift. Dad would read the Christmas story out of Luke. For as long as I can remember, he read it.
Yeah.
So I got to record that last one. And so then I switched it over to DVD and CD and all that.
Yeah.
That was Connor's third or fourth Christmas. So until then, I'd been reading the Christmas story for Connor, my son, before he'd opened up gifts. But after that, and still to this day, every Christmas morning, Dad reads the Christmas story. We watch that.
Yeah.
We watch that DVD every morning, or come Christmas morning, every Christmas morning. And he continues that tradition. That is, as far as my worldly possessions, that's the one thing I cherish the most.
Yeah. That's really cool that you were so intentional and had the even forethought to do that. To even give your dad a journal and recording, be like, hey, what do you want me to know? Like, I don't know. I think that's really cool.
And to hear,
really, really, really
you know,
cool.
and on Christmas mornings now, to hear him say, read the Christmas story, to hear his voice on Christmas morning, you know, and to see him in the video is very special.
Yeah. So, Benny, for somebody who maybe is dealing with, I don't know, you pick which one of these things you wanna talk about, the PTSD or the depression or anxiety. What is a word of encouragement or advice that you would give to someone who's maybe in the middle of that season?
Well, the depression and anxiety is a symptom of a PTS episode. PTS can come in many forms. It can encompass a lot of different elements and different things. For me, anxiety and depression were big key pieces. And so it's just, I would love to say pray. It's hard to pray in those moments. It's hard to have a clear head in those moments. I felt all alone in those moments. I felt all alone. I felt like a monster. I felt like I didn't want to see another person again. Many times I would leave the house, I'd throw my backpacking stuff in, and my goal is to go to the mountains, never be seen again. But by the time I got 8 miles down the road, God would soften my heart, and I'd pull over at a Walmart, and I'd sleep in my truck for a few days. And afterwards, I was just fine. He'd work on me, get me back. My thing is breathe. Breathe. Don't shut God out. He's with you. It may not seem like it. He's with you. Don't give up on him, and don't give up on you. Those are probably the biggest things. Because in those moments, you don't like yourself very much. You don't like yourself at all. It's not how my father raised me. Being angry and loud and ugly to my kids or my spouse, those weren't things I was raised to do. And so, you're allowing Satan to take over, and just can't listen to the lies. Can't listen to the lies that Satan telling you that they'd be better off without you. You need to just go do this instead. Whatever it is. But if you can, pray. But just know that He's still with you. Whether you feel Him or not, He's still with
you. Yeah. That's good. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing and for being vulnerable and for opening up about some of these hard things. I know that it's not always easy, but I know that people out there are listening, and I know that it'll be encouraging for somebody. So I just want to say thank you so much, Benny.
That was definitely probably the most in-depth I've gone in a long time in some of these topics. Which is okay.
Yeah.
I need to do that every once in a while.
Yeah. And maybe now you have this story to encourage somebody else.
Completely.
Well, for those listening, Benny, who maybe want to follow along with you or Responsible Stewardship, where can they find you and more information about that?
Well, they can learn more about Responsible Stewardship at responsiblestewardship.org. We also have social media, Responsible Stewardship on Instagram and Facebook. Follow along, maybe see something that where you can get involved. Maybe you have a spot in your own community that you would love to clean up, but you just don't know how to get started. We'll help you. We can send you everything that you need, help you get connected with your local municipality, maybe other local businesses to help support your effort. And who knows where that goes down the road? You might decide you want to become a team leader yourself for your state or your area. For me personally, about the only thing I do anymore is photography. I do a lot of concert photography and a lot of emergency photography kind of deal. But you can follow along my Instagram and Facebook at The Real Benny Braden. It's kind of a pun on words because I'm actually a junior. And so it's kind of like saying, I'm the real one, not my dad. But I get a kick out of that one. But I know he would if he was alive today. He would laugh about it. But yeah, it's cool to connect with people and seeing people get involved in their own community. It's the only way people are going to be able to take their communities back is by taking care of them. And you only have nice things if you keep them nice.
Truth.
Yep.
Truth. Well, thank you so much again, Benny, and it has been a pleasure as always.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of My Valley, His Victory. If you or someone you know are interested in being on this podcast, please email myvalleyhisvictory@gmail.com.